Something that God's been talking and dealing with me on is being on the fence between things, like not deciding to do things in your life. And it's kind of been, something for me that's really personal because I was saved at a very young age. And so I spent a long time of my life kind of doing my own thing, living my own ways, just kind of, doing what Robert wanted to do. And it took me a long time to kind of commit and fully start to live for God. And so I wanted to share y'all kind of that journey that I went through because I felt like God wanted me to share this with y'all. Of course, I like to relate everything to stories. And a little background for me, I was raised in Mississippi. And if you know anything about Mississippi, like it's a big hunting and fishing state. Yeah, Jesse's from Mississippi.
That's right.
It's a fun state, not a lot to do but hunt and fish. So that's why everybody does it. And it's so popular that when you get your driver's license, it actually is a boating license too. Like you don't have to do anything else. I think Florida's the same way. Like you don't have to have any other requirements to go fishing when you first get your driver's license. And so I remember when I was a little kid, I was 14 years old, all right? And me and my buddy, we used to go on the bank fishing all the time, and I love to fish. I mean, my last name's Bass, so naturally that's my thing, right? And we were out there fishing, and one day my little buddy, when we were 14, because I was little, still little, he got a boat, little bitty bass boat. It's about 10 foot long with this little bitty motor on there, and we were pumped. Because as a young kid, like to get a boat, to actually go out on the water, that's a big deal. That's huge. And so we go out in the water, we start, kind of trolling around, getting used to the boat. I mean, I remember this boat was so slow, like we're both on there and the nose of the boat's like sticking up and we're like, trying to go as fast as we could. We're going nowhere. But we got used to fishing, we got used to doing our thing. And of course, like boys like to take adventure. We like to do things we're not supposed to do. Right. And so in Mississippi, we were on the coast. And so the rivers flow right into the ocean. And there's a popular fishing spot for any of y'all that know fishing where the rivers meet the ocean. Very popular because the bigger fish are waiting for these little small fish to come down to the ocean. They're going to tear them up and they're going to eat them. And so most fishers know this. And so what did we do as young boys? Like, we want to go to that spot. So one morning we woke up, we go down to the spot. Of course, it takes us forever on this little bitty boat, And we get there, we set up, and my buddy's fishing, and I'll never forget this. Like, we got these little bitty poles, they're like that tall, right? Because we're little kids. And he's sitting there fishing, and all of a sudden, boom, a fish hits it. And his pole's like bent over. And he's trying to reel it in, like I'm over there, I'm pulling on him, he's pulling on the pole. We're both trying to get this fish in. Finally, he pulls it in, it's a big old bass. I never forget, it was huge. I mean, granted, a 14-pound bass, which is probably the record. I mean, it's only like that fat, but in my mind, it was like this big, As a little kid, it was huge. And we get it on the boat, we're looking at it, we're in shock, and I'm pumped up. Because when your friend does something, you want to one-up them, right? Like, we're all like that. And so I'm like, I got this. So I throw my pole out, I'm like, I'm gonna catch me one bigger. Because he's putting the fish in the ice chest, and I'm going to catch, and as soon as I throw my line in, it hits the water, a boat comes flying around the corner. I'm like, man, this guy's gonna mess me up. But he comes flying around the corner and he actually pulls right up to our boat and he ties up. And I'm like, what the heck? This guy's tying up to our boat. Like, I think we're about to get robbed. I think this guy's about to take our fish. I'm freaking out. Like, what are you supposed to do is when a 14-year-old boy, when a grown man ties up to your boat? And so we're freaked out. I'm holding my pole. I'm scared to death. And the guy's like, hey, did y'all just catch a fish? And of course, I'm like in shock. My buddy's like, yeah. And he's like, can I see it? I'm thinking, no, you can't see my But my buddy lifts up the ice chest and the guy's like, that's cool. Well, I'm the game warden and that's a good sized fish. Can I see y'all's fishing license? And I'm like, what fishing license? Like, what do you mean we gotta have a fishing license? Like, I'm 14, I don't know nothing about no license. And he's like, yeah, you have to have a license to fish here. And we're like, well, we don't know. Like, we didn't know that, And he's like, yeah, well, you have to have a saltwater or freshwater license to fish. Like, he's kind of educating us because he knows we're young. He's like, yeah, guys, if you're in the river, you got to have a freshwater. If you're in the ocean, you got to have a saltwater license. And my buddy, without skipping a beat, I'll never forget this, he goes, well, we're in the middle. This is called brackish water, so we don't need a license. I'm like, no, you don't tell this to the guy. Like, we're going to get arrested. It made him so mad. It made him so upset. And because he's actually right. When salt water mixes with fresh water, it's called brackish water. Because it's a mix of the two. And I didn't even know this at the time, but he did. And of course, what did that do? Game warden's mad. Because he's kind of right. And the game warden said, you don't understand. Any mix of salt with fresh water is considered salt water. Even though it's called brackish, it's still salt water. He goes, so you have to have a saltwater license. And we're just kind of standing there, you know, like he got us. Ain't nothing we can do about it. And my buddy's like, well, can we get away with it? Because we didn't know. And he's like, tell you what, if you throw the fish back, I'll let y'all go. And I'm like, no, let's take the ticket. I want the fish. Like, I'm going to take this back and show everybody. But my buddy's like, all right, I don't want to get a ticket. And so he like kisses the fish, you know, and like lets it back off in the water. And I'm just like watching this whole thing. And so the game warden kind of unties his boat and he starts to drive off. And he says something I'll never forget till I die. He actually said, boys, let this be a lesson. He's like, there's no such thing as in the middle. And like, I'm thinking about this, and you know, 14, like, you're like, go away. You know what I'm saying? You're like, I don't want to hear what you got to say. Like, I just want to fish. No such thing as in the middle. I'm like, that's stupid. I'm like, whatever, man. It took me years of growing up to get what this man said. Because you know what? The world's like that. You have to have a fishing license. You have to have a driver's license. You have to have a business license, right? You have to have license, and there's rules to follow in life, right? Isn't there?
Right.
So I started to realize as I got older that there's rules and regulations you have to follow. And the world gets that. There's a saltwater and there's a freshwater license you have to have. But I started to think as I got older that, well, why don't we apply that with God? Why do we have this in the middle mindset with God? Because a lot of times, like, we want to go to church, but the rest of the week we want to do what we want. Like, we want this brackish water mindset when it comes to God. Like, we want to be in the middle. And I started to realize that, and y'all, I'm just going to be honest. It took me 13 years to get this concept. This is why I wanted to share this with y'all. It took me 13 years of living my life in the middle. I went to church every Sunday. I went to church every Wednesday. I was what they call a back row Baptist. You know what that means? I sat in the back, and as soon as service was over, I was out. I went to church, I did my time, but during the rest of the week, I did what Robert wanted to do, right? That's what I did. And I was always in the middle. I was always living my life doing this a little bit and doing that a little bit. Being in the salt water of the world, being in the fresh water of God. I was back and forth all the time. And it wasn't till 13 years later that I finally realized that there's no such thing as in the middle. Because if you live in the world a little bit, you're in the world. You have to choose. And you know what was the deciding factor? It was when I read Revelation 3:16. And it says, God actually says, I wish that you were hot or cold. But because you are lukewarm, I'm going to spit you out. I was like, what? I was like, does that mean God's going to reject me because I'm not choosing Him? And that's exactly what it meant. And that stuck with me hard, because if God realizes there's no such thing as in the middle, and the world realizes there's no such thing in the middle, then what was I doing? Was I in denial? Did I not get it? And so finally, I realized that I needed a license when it came to God. If the world says I need a license, then I must need a license with God. That's what I figured out. And you know what I realized? Is that Jesus was that license. And here's what's amazing. You know what the world does? Check this out. It took me, I'm telling y'all, I want to share this because this is important. It took me 13 years. I don't want y'all to make the same mistake. Is the world makes you have a license, right? But the world says you got to pay for it. The world says, I need you to give me money. I need you to give me your works, your time, your energy to have a license, to be in the world. But what does God say? God says, no, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you Jesus. Because Jesus paid your price. So to have a relationship with God, God says, no, you don't have to pay anything. I give you something. All you got to do is take it. All you got to do is have it. Here's Jesus. But are we taking it? Or do we want to like, oh, no, I get it, God, I've got it, but I want to be right here. And that's how I was. And it doesn't work, because here's what happens. The game warden came when I was fishing, right? He came and I got in trouble because I didn't have a license. And when problems come in our life, where do we turn? Where's our license? Where do we stand? Because God's offering it. But when those problems and those trials in life, and unfortunately, we're all going to die one day. And when death comes, when we get to that day where we got to turn in our license, you have to have accepted Jesus. Because that's the only payment that's going to last. Right. That's it. That's the only thing that's God's going to accept as your payment. Nothing else you do in this world is going to be good enough. And it took me 13 years to realize this, of my life going back and forth, living in the middle. And it didn't work. It just didn't work. And so I know God wanted me to share this with y'all today. And here's what I want to leave with y'all. It's just one question I want you to think about. Wherever you're at in life, what's keeping you from choosing God? What is keeping you from devoting and just saying, you know what, I'm going to leave everything behind. I'm going to be committed like God wants me to, and I'm going to accept Jesus and live a life for Him.